The following podcast is a deep, shallow dive production.
And you're going to love it.
Okay, let's go.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Happy Friday. Sorry I missed you the past couple of days, and this guy's getting out a little later, but you can listen to it over the weekend. Anyway, lots going on to talk about today, and I'm going to try to kind of keep it top line and go into, actually, I don't even know if I am going to keep it top line. Maybe I'll dive in a little deeper, but I'm going to go into a variety of things. I did want to start off by talking about, man, the unbelievably tragic airplane helicopter crash in DC. I think that happened on Tuesday night. That is seriously horrible. That is seriously just unbelievably awful. But what I wanted to say about that was, everything in this country right now is just, it's not about right versus wrong. It's about right versus left. And this is a perfect example. So I posted a few things on my Instagram story. By the way, if you don't follow me on Instagram personally or the Deep Shallow Dive, I would appreciate it if you did, because I'm actually really going to start to kind of assert my opinions and just perspectives, not even opinions, perspectives a little bit more through Instagram and really through the stories aspect. But in regards to, again, just this tragic situation, I will tell you the other night, Thursday night, I watched on, I think, CBS or NBC News, just some clips of who was on board that flight. And so I guess a big group of people in the skating community, the ice skating community that were at, I guess, an event in Wichita, Kansas. And it was a lot of the young up and coming, American ice skaters that, who knows, might have someday been Olympic champions. Oh my God. You watched those poor kids who lost their life. Everybody, by the way, again, everybody. But you watch some of the videos of those poor kids that, lost their life so tragically, and it just breaks your heart. It absolutely does. And so, it caused me to honestly, I thought, okay, what would I have done and said if I was president of the United States? I know some of you are laughing, but if I was president of the United States, what would be my opening, I guess, take coming out of the gate in something just so tragic, 10 days into my administration? And I will say, I did not really like the way President Trump and then Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth came at it, because they basically started to talk about, DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how that potentially was the reason behind this crash. And again, if you don't know, there is a little bit of a backstory between the FAA, making a big stink about DEI hires, and then there's an entire thread going around the internet about how the FAA, either laid off 1,000 air traffic controllers or they didn't hire them properly. And again, I'm not saying there's no validity to that potentially. I didn't look into it close enough. To be honest, there probably will be validity into that. My point is, coming out of, just as difficult of a 4 years that we've had and as turbulent the climate is, I just thought that if I was president, seriously, and again, even if I had gone through the incredible scrutiny that Trump's gone through, my goal is to calm the room. My goal is, first of all, to deliver empathy to the families and the people really affected. And again, if you watched the videos of, the 13-year-old, the 12-year-old, the 15-year-old ice skating phenoms, it just crushes you. It absolutely breaks your heart to see that those kids lost their lives, let alone everybody else that was on board. And so my point is, I just think coming out the gate, let's not jump into accusation mode. Let's calm the waters a little bit. Let's really focus on and figuring out what happened in that situation. You know what I mean? Like, if it comes out that the blame is because of somebody that was underqualified as the air traffic controller, underqualified as whomever was the pilot of the Black Hawk Down helicopter. I don't think the actual pilot on the airliner has any blame because of everything I'm seeing. That flight was cleared for landing. That flight was in the proper flight path that it should have been, at the proper altitude, at the proper speed. I don't think the crew on board the plane did anything wrong. I think the blame is with the crew on the Black Hawk Down helicopter. And so again, if through the proper, vetting and investigation, something comes out that speaks to the wrong people being in the right job for the wrong reasons, okay, then let's have a discussion about it, but not right out the gate when again, they didn't know that. So what I wrote on Instagram, which got a lot of reaction actually, was that I said, quick thoughts. In the aftermath of a tragic midair collision in DC, leadership should prioritize empathy and support for the families and country. Both Pete Hegseth and President Trump immediately pointed to DEI hiring practices. I don't even think the investigation has yielded that data in this specific tragedy. And again, the key part of that is in this specific tragedy. If it does, then pound that drum, but not right out of the gate. So again, if it does, then pound that drum and pound it as loud as you want, but not right out the gate. So anyway, I really do think that. And, like I said, I'm going to try and be much more transparent with you guys about thoughts on things. And again, this is coming from somebody that voted for Trump, but I'm not gonna fall into the Trump worship syndrome, which I don't think I ever really have. And again, this is not calling him out in a bad way. I'm just providing critique, no different than the critique that I've done against, Biden during his administration, against Kamala. It would be totally weak. Honestly, it would be weak of me not to critique Trump. It really would. And I think I have done that throughout. And even someone like Pete Hegseth, whom I didn't agree with that as being the candidate, but I will commit this on the flip side. If he does something that is good, I'm gonna applaud him for that as well. I'm hoping I'm wrong with him. I really am. I'm hoping I was wrong with him being a hire, or him being the hire for Secretary of Defense. But anyway, my point is, I'm just going to bring it all to the surface. And what I'd ask you guys is to kind of do the same and rise up to that 30,000 feet and think to yourself, okay, if I was president of the United States, what would be my opening statement? Would it be immediately pouring, gas on the fire and going right at the throat of DEI and saying that's the to blame for this, and then throwing that blame on the Biden administration? Or would it be to calm the waters, calm the country, and then from there say, hey, we're going to do a full-blown investigation? I am concerned that there is the potential that the wrong people were in these jobs for the wrong reasons. And so I want to get to the bottom of that, and I want to put a plan in place to correct that, because accidents like this just absolutely should not happen. Listen to this. This is from a pilot in DC, and it kind of went viral on Threads, actually.
Here's my take on the crash. It was 100% the helicopter's fault. That jet was on an established short final to a runway. It was not anything out of the norm except for that helicopter. He should not have been there. Air traffic control should have kept him out of the way, but the truth is that helicopter should never have been there. Imagine it's like the driveway to your house, right? That aircraft was on an approach that was stable and established, and he was very close to landing. So it's really, really sad. The other thing is, could that airplane see the helicopter? I don't think the helicopter was ever seen by the pilots of that airplane. They don't have what's called TCAS or ADSB, which is a way for the pilots on commercial, private, or public transport to see military. They just never saw it coming. And then the last question was, did people feel anything? What was it like on board? Well, here's what we do know. They were about 400 feet. They were probably doing about 120 knots, which is like 135 miles an hour. And when they hit, it was a lot of energy really quick, and they fell straight down into the river, which was basically hard as a rock. I don't think anybody felt any pain. There probably was some panic for a few seconds, and then it was all over. Nobody drowned in this thing in the river. They were all, unfortunately, deceased before they had the opportunity to drown. This was the helicopter's fault, and it's really sad to say that. I feel terrible about the lives lost, and my heart goes out to everybody, but I wanted to answer your questions as a pilot. If you have questions, leave them here in the comments.
All right, so that guy, there was like 1 million comments. I read through them, and there really wasn't anything that kind of disagreed with what he said. So, man, that is just awful. That is just awful. So, all right, anyway, my heart goes out to the families involved and everybody involved. That is just tragic, man. It is absolutely tragic. And it's just another thing that reminds you we just don't know what's, coming around the corner. So, and again, I'm so guilty of this, but man, try to live in the moment and try to enjoy every day as much as you can. I'll say it again, and I'm talking to myself too. So anyway, all right. The next thing I want to talk about is, man, all these Senate confirmation hearings. They have just been zesty, absolutely zesty. Or maybe spicy. I should say spicy. But in particular, the ones that have drawn the most attention are Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Tulsi Gabbard, and then Kash Patel. So I'm just going to focus on RFK Jr. for a second, and I'm not going to play any of the clips. I'm just going to kind of give you my thoughts on it. Again, when I think of the previous HHS secretary. And by the way, HHS is Health and Human Services, and it was a guy named Javier Becerra, and you probably will remember him. I mean, he went through a lot of scrutiny. Obviously, the Republicans scrutinized the hell out of him, and they basically said, hey, this guy's not qualified to be in this position. And so I thought to myself, they're definitely going at RFK Jr. as far as his medical qualifications. So I wonder what were Javier Becerra's qualifications. And so I went into good old ChatGPT and I said, hey, the previous HHS Secretary, Javier Becerra, what were his qualifications that made him a fit for the HHS role? And so ChatGPT answered, Javier Becerra was never really qualified to run HHS. He had no background in medicine, public health, or healthcare administration. He was a lawyer and a career politician. His experience was in lawsuits and policy, not managing a massive health system or responding to public health crises. His appointment was more about politics than qualifications, and it showed in how he handled major health challenges like COVID-19 and Medicare reforms. HHS needed a healthcare expert, not an attorney. That was pretty wild. That was the reply. Now, again, I did do a couple prompts before getting to that direct answer, but fundamentally, he wasn't qualified in the fashion that they're attacking RFK Jr., saying, hey, you're not a doctor, you don't have medical history, yada, yada, yada. Now, again, I'm just going to end on this, and I'm going to say, the thing about Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and I have my reservations with him. My main reservation is I think that for whatever reason, he absolutely is like kind of owned by the Zionist faction of this country, and he never will be critical on anything related to Israel. And it's actually kind of surprising. And again, I'm not saying right or wrong. I'm just giving you the facts. It's kind of surprising because, his dad, RFK, and JFK, both of those guys absolutely had their issues with David Ben-Gurion, who at the time was the prime minister of Israel. And we're going to go into that in a future episode. But I will tell you this, there is, the top two theories on who killed JFK are, number one, the CIA, because he wanted to pull out of Vietnam, and basically that was the military industrial complex coming in and saying, oh my God, if he pulls out of Vietnam, our piggy bank goes away. And if you remember, Dwight D. Eisenhower, who was the president prior to Kennedy, in his outgoing address to America, he's the one who created the term military industrial complex. And Eisenhower was the one who said, be weary of the military industrial complex. And so here comes Kennedy, JFK, I'm talking. Here comes JFK. He becomes president. His immediate first major thing that he was going to do was basically pull out of Vietnam and pull all the troops out of Vietnam. And by doing that, that put an immediate end to that money machine of the military industrial complex. So the number one theory is that he was kind of taken out by, the CIA / MIC / deep state that had formed. The number two theory, by the way, and this is one that many of you might not even know, was that JFK was also kind of butting heads with this guy named David Ben-Gurion, who at the time was not only the prime minister of Israel, but he was the guy that founded Israel. And they were butting heads on two major issues. And like I said, I'll get into this in a different episode, but they were butting heads on one, allowing Israel to have nuclear weapons. JFK said, no, you guys aren't allowed to have nuclear weapons. And obviously Ben-Gurion wanted nuclear weapons. And then two was he wanted to make the precursor to AIPAC, which is the big lobby organization. JFK said, you guys need to register as a foreign country and a foreign interest. So basically he was making AIPAC, the precursor to AIPAC, I forget what the name of that was, but he wanted them to register as a foreign interest. And if they did that, then they would not be able to contribute to politicians. And so if you got that label, then all of a sudden the, again, Israeli lobby at the time, which became the modern day AIPAC, would not be able to, basically influence our politicians. And so that was the other big thing. And like I said, I'll flesh all that out in a different episode. But those two things, I mean, anyone with a brain and does research knows that fundamentally JFK and RFK, it's one of those two things or a combination thereof. There's also all these theories about the mob, the Italian mob did it. I don't believe that. Obviously, I don't believe Lee Harvey Oswald was able to pull that off with a magic bullet that changed directions 12 times in the air and killed or went through 7 people or went through 7 different situations and then ended up in perfect condition on the gurney in the hospital. I don't believe that's how John F. Kennedy in particular was killed. So anyway, there's that. And so again, with RFK, I'm surprised he's so all in there. I could see him saying, okay, I'm not going to be critical. That's cool. But he almost has gone the complete other side. So that's my calling a spade on him. But then on the flip side, I will say I have really liked the disruption that he has brought into politics. And so let me read this. This was another Instagram story I posted. And the title was What a Mess. And it says, whether it's RFK Jr. or someone else, can we all agree on one thing? America is sick. We need to fix this. We have a poisoned food supply. Big Pharma profits off disease. The military-industrial complex is real. Big tech plus AI are reshaping everything. Those are facts. Those are absolute facts. And then I wrote, just remember, in the 8 years of Obama, 4 years of Trump and 4 years of Biden, we've never talked about, one, our poison food supply, two, how big pharma profits off disease, and three, the military industrial complex. And so to finish out on RFK Jr., I will absolutely give him credit for bringing those three topics into the forefront. Again, our poisoned food supply and really big food, how and big agra, or big ag they call it, big agriculture. But he really is the one that has brought that into the discussion. He's also the one that's really brought big pharma into the discussion, and holding big pharma accountable for profiting off of sickness. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Good health makes a lot of sense, but it doesn't make a lot of dollars. That's true. And so I'll give him credit for bringing big food and our poison food supply to the forefront, bringing the accountability that's needed with big pharma to the forefront, and then bringing the military industrial complex to the forefront. I mean, think about it. Prior to really the past 12 months and him banging that drum, I mean, certain people knew about it, but not nearly as many as are talking now. So in terms of RFK Jr., I mean, I will give him credit for those three things. And therefore, I do think he is a welcomed voice. I would support him in this HHS role. The guy's 70 years old and he's jacked. Like, have you seen pictures of him when it's a little goofy what he does, but the dude goes to like Muscle Beach in Venice, California when the weather was good, or he goes to Gold's Gym, and I mean, he's ripped. He's in like great shape. And I'm not saying that's everything, but I do appreciate that. I do appreciate somebody that takes care of their own body when they are in a position to help people take care of their bodies. All right, that's it on that. The other thing I did want to share is I had a good friend, and I won't drop names here, but I had a good friend in a situation where their dad is going through, basically what we've been able to determine is issues related to getting the COVID-19 vaccines. And so I will say this, and I finally kind of had the balls to post on this, because prior to Trump coming in, it was very, very, I was very hesitant posting on just even thoughts, you know what I mean? Because man, they censored so much. And I mean, I think that's why I got banned off of Twitter and TikTok. That is ridiculous that they permanently deleted me on those two platforms. And I did not even have much following at all. And I really didn't even say anything that bad on both. Bastards. Anyway, so with Trump in the mix, and again, that's interesting too, because remember, Trump is kind of still touting himself as, Papa Vax. So there's a whole different element that we have to discuss and really unpack, to use that stupid podcast word, in terms of that. But the other thing I wrote, and I wanted to read this, and the title was Another Thing. And this really was coming out of my great discussion with very, very close friend in regards to her dad. And I said, we need to get over the discomfort of talking about COVID-19 vaccine injuries. They're happening, and ignoring them doesn't make them go away. We need open, honest conversations, not silence. Learning from each other is how we help each other. Turbo cancers, sudden deaths, cardiac arrests, they're real and happening more and more. And I really feel that, and I've been affected personally by very close friends that I know, suffered from injuries related to their COVID-19 vaccines. And so, I'd ask you, anybody listening, if there's something that has taken place with you or your family or anyone, this absolutely can be in confidence. Like I just mentioned from a previous friend, I'm keeping that one in confidence. And But hit me up. Let me know. I'd like to understand it. First of all, I'd like to see if I can add any value and help in your situation. But secondly, I would like to bring that to the forefront, because I think the more we talk about it, somebody else might be going through the same thing, and we can, ideally add value to what's going on with them. So anyway, that was the third big thing from the Instagram post that seemed to garner a lot of activity. All right, there's so much more I want to talk about, but you know what? I'll just hold it. It's 25 minutes, and I know this one kind of got out late on a Friday. So anyway, that's it, everybody. Have a great weekend. Call a spade, and keep the feedback coming in. Please, again, let me know any thoughts on anybody that either themselves or their family member or friends have experienced something in the realm of a vaccine injury. I will be totally anonymous with all of that, but I would like to get more examples and talk about it, because again, maybe your example and what you've experienced, could help somebody think through what's going on with them. So anyway, that's it. Have a great weekend.
That was a great way to end it.
This episode was brought to you by the new book, Deep Shallow Dive Into You, available now on Amazon and Barnes & Noble in hardcover and paperback. Don't forget to sign up for our new mailing list on our website at deepshallowdive.com.